Please be seated. As some of you may know, in my role as chaplain at Millbrook School, I take some time to provide opportunities for our students to do work with the homeless and people in need. And one of the organizations that I'd like for us to connect with is called Family Promise. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it is a national nonprofit that serves the homeless. And it was started in 1988 by a woman named Karen Olson, who is from Summit, New Jersey, but worked in corporate offices in Manhattan. And so one day when she was busying herself to get to work on the streets of Manhattan, she passed a woman and decided that she would go buy her a sandwich and give it to her. And Millie, as her name was, accepted the sandwich, but then, as the story goes, she asked for something else. She asked that she be heard and that she could tell her story to Karen and be listened to and seen for who she was. She was Millie. She was not just a diminished, disconnected body on the street. And so this was the genesis and is still the mission of the organization, to see and serve people as whole people. Part of their mantra is, once a family promise family, always a family promise family. In other words, the organization helps with everything from job training to financial literacy coaching to finding childcare and resources for physical and mental health. And the families stay with case management until they have met their goals, which means even when they are no longer homeless. So some people ask, well, why do you put out these resources beyond the incident of homelessness? The answer is simple. Homelessness is an experience that a family is having. It is not a defining feature of their personhood. Once the experience of homelessness ends, they are still people with needs. We are all people with needs. It is tempting, and we do this often, to reduce people to a singular set of circumstances. We use universal language to categorize people so that we can wrap our minds around solving problems. We talk about the homeless, or single mothers, or addicts, or at-risk youth, in categories as if they are monoliths, all needing or wanting the same thing, even when we know that there are no universal claims that can make sense of the incredible diversity of people and human experience in the world. And yet, we fall back on this universal language to help us identify ourselves and help us identify others and to understand our place. You can probably think of several words that describe you: father, mother, brother, sister, teacher, financial advisor, publisher, administrator, college graduate, Yankees or Red Sox fan, whatever. When you introduce yourself, you probably rattle off a number of these markers along with your name. But even after that, hello, I'm Cam, I'm Bill's wife, I still haven't given you much information about myself. We are more complex than a set of relationships or identity markers we can quickly rattle off with a handshake or in an elevator. So, putting yourself in Jesus' place, how would you answer Pilate if he asked you, "Are you the King of the Jews?" No easy answers. It's a loaded question. If Jesus answers yes, he is defying Pilate's authority. But if he answers no, he's not telling the truth. But in the end, he very cleverly answers by asking Pilate about the identity of the person behind the question. Is it Pilate who wishes to know? Or has he been consulting other sources? Throughout this text, throughout the entire Gospel of John, Jesus refuses to adhere to any particular identity category. He will say that he is the vine, the bread of life, the way, the light, the word, but he is not a king. He has a kingdom, but not like any kingdom known to Pilate. He has followers, but not in the ways that the Jews follow their temple leaders or the Romans follow their rulers. There are no tidy categories for him. He is something else. Yet still, Jesus responds to the question of his identity with how he relates to the world. His identity is not about how well he fits categories, and so Pilate is left without a vocabulary or a language for him. Jesus came to engage with the world and its people and to testify to the truth. Testify, which means to give proof or evidence for what is true. And those who discern and who identify and belong to that truth belong to him. They can hear it and they follow him. So that begs the question, what is truth? The very question that Pilate raises. What one person sees as true, another finds false. We learn this soon enough when Pilate announces that he has found no case against Jesus, but the crowd demands that he be executed anyway. The subjectivity of truth may be part of the point Jesus is striving to make from the start of this encounter when he asks Pilate who has inquired about him. Jesus' identity is subjective based on who is asking. What is truth? Who is asking? Jesus doesn't deny any of the qualifiers Pilate tries on him: king, Jew, criminal. It is as though these markers are simply ineffective to tell the whole story. He is more than a ruler or an adherent to a religion or somebody who breaks laws. We can't add these qualifiers up and arrive at Jesus. Neither can we add up qualifiers of any person and arrive at the fullness of their identity. Think about those words that I talked about earlier: mother, father, spouse, sibling, doctor, artist. These all define you. They are markers that help you announce who you are to the world, but the sum of your parts does not add up to the fullness of your humanity. Likewise, the parts of you that you'd rather forget, flunking out of school, being let go from a job, that time you stole some cash and no one found out, losing your temper sometimes, your addiction, your good intentions, but lack of discipline. However it is that you believe you're not enough, where you fall short, that doesn't define you either. Your truth is deeper than any qualifier can acknowledge, deeper than any one part of your life. Your truth is the essence of who you are as a child of God. Your truth is the creative spark that makes you the only person like you in the world. Throughout the Gospels, Jesus is caught restoring the spark in people who have lost it by becoming shackled to to the identifiers others have used to define them or that they have used to limit themselves. He restored sight to the blind. He restored the tax collectors, the adulterers, and the widows back to their communities. Again and again, Jesus meets people who are not living to their fullest created potential because they have been limited by society or by themselves. Each time, Jesus sees people for who they were created to be, not for who they have become or for how their community has defined or treated them. What is truth? The truth is that we are all children of God, each beautifully and wonderfully made. Jesus sees the beauty of the people around him. He celebrates the beauty of the humanity of his disciples when he washes their feet. He foretells Peter's denial of him, but does not forsake him. Jesus sees our strengths and our limitations, our wholeness and our brokenness, and accepts them anyway. That's the truth. Who we were and are created to be is enough. Without any of the qualifying identifiers, without introducing ourselves by our relationships or our professions, without any of the language that only partially tells the story of who we are recognized before God by the fullness of who we were created to be. Not only that, and perhaps more importantly, not only that, but we are invited to engage the world the way Jesus does, led by this profound truth from within that our identity does not fit the mold of artificial constructs. We are invited to live boldly into our gifts and offer to the world the fullness of the truth, not the things the world demands that we be. That truth inspired the founder of Family Promise, Karen Olson, to stop in her rush to work to offer something to Millie. That truth inspired Millie to ask to be heard and known as a whole person. That truth inspired Karen and Millie to enter into a covenanted relationship, a promise of both becoming whole in the eyes of God. The truth of the gospel is this: because the sinful forces outside us and within us seek to limit and define us to suit their own purposes, God, who loves you so much, stood before Pilate, let himself be falsely tried, and died a cruel death in order to defeat those forces of death. Because death is not the truth. Life is. And Jesus rose to life to give that same fullness of life to you, the life for which God created you and promised to you. That is the truth. That is the gospel. Thanks be to God. Amen.